Pebet. So last time, we were getting towards the end of this chapter on Loshon hora, and last time we saw regarding Loshon hora, speaking about people, there also enters the discussion about thinking about people. And there was this little section here about being dan the kaf, judging people favorably. And what we saw here is that if the person is basically a God-fearing person, and you see that person doing something wrong, then you're actually required to judge that person favorably, even if it looks like the majority of the likelihood is that he did something wrong. You still have to judge him favorably. All the more so if it's half-half, 50-50. I'm not sure which way to go. That thing that he did or that thing that he said seems to me that it's forbidden, but it could also be permitted. I'm not really sure. It could go either way. So you're certainly required to judge him favorably and say he didn't do something wrong or he didn't say something wrong. It's just me who's misunderstanding. Even, however, if the majority of the indications would seem to suggest that he did or said something wrong, even then you're required to judge him favorably and assume he did the right thing. Now, if you know for sure that the person did something wrong, you also have to assume that he did tshuva afterwards. So he shouldn't be viewed as a rasha.
But what about at the moment?
At the moment, you're required to, if you know he's doing something wrong at the moment, then the question is, what, are you allowed to judge him as a rasha or not? Is that the question? I don't know, like what the practical, what the nafka mina would be, but yes, I suppose if he's a righteous person, but you know he's doing something wrong right now at this moment, then you know he's doing an avera, and you have to say he's under the sway of the Yetzer hara.
And then we pray for him and say, may he do it too.
Yeah.
And then
and then once it's over, you have to assume that since he's a tzaddik, he's a righteous person, that he did tshuva. But next time you do see him, you have to treat him as if he's a tzaddik, but you have to assume that he did tshuva. He has a hazakah that he's righteous. He just gave sway to the Yetzer hara. If you're not sure, even if the majority of indications which just says he did something wrong, you're still required to judge him favorably, and all the more so if it's 50-50. In a case where it's a benoini, a person who himself is kind of like basically a good person, but from time to time slips up. So we saw there that in a case where it's 50-50, you're required to judge the person favorably. If the majority of the indication would be that he did something wrong, then you don't have to judge him favorably and assume he did something right, but you're supposed to leave it open. I'm not sure. So that would be the difference. The righteous person, even if its majority looks wrong, you have to judge him positively, favorably, all the more so if it's 50-50. The average person, if it looks like the majority of the likelihood is that he did something wrong, then you're required at least to keep it open. It seems to me he did something wrong. I'm not sure. Seems to me he did something wrong. I'm not sure. I'll remain undecided. You're not allowed to do that regarding the righteous person. You have to decide he was not transgressing. Here, you leave it open. It seems that he did something wrong, but I can't conclude that he necessarily did. He might not have. I don't know. I'm not sure. In the case of 50-50, then you would have to judge him favorably. It could go either way. I'm sure he wasn't doing anything wrong. And then regarding the wicked person, you're not required to judge him favorably at all.
Should you?
What?
Should you?
No.
You shouldn't.
No. Why should you? You end up harming yourself or others. You have to suspect that he's harming you or harming others, and therefore if you judge him favorably, you're just being naive. I mean, you could say, poor fellow, he can't control his Yetzer hara.
I mean, that's favorably, no?
Okay, that's what I'm not sure what you meant, yeah? You could try and make a favorable judgment, but that would be different than judging him favorably. In this context, judging favorably means like deciding whether he's doing something right or wrong, or having done something right or wrong. Now, you don't have a requirement, and it might be harmful to decide that he did something right and not wrong. Right? But once you've decided he's done something wrong, you can still be malamed kaf schus in another way, which is to say, even though he's doing something wrong, it's really not entirely his fault. That's the way he was brought up, or he's under the hora, or he's a weak-minded person, or he's emotionally unstable, or whatever the case may be. There might be reasons to mitigate the guilt of the person, but there's no reason to say, regarding a wicked person, I'm sure he didn't mean that. No, that's the whole point. Since he's wicked, he did mean it. He did mean it. This is a person who you have to be therefore, careful of. You have to be aware. You have to be cautious of such a person. Yeah. So that was kind of like a summary from what we saw last time. Let's go further now on Kuf Pebet, the last paragraph on the page, starting with the word im. Im gila odam al chota'oscha. If a person revealed your transgressions, al tomar kamoshi gila chatosi gamani gale chatoso. Just like he made known my transgressions, I'll make known his. That sounds to me like vengeance. It says, lo yisikom v'lo yisitor. Don't guard a vengeance and don't take vengeance against another person. V'gam lo tispire. Afal pishu hu gilo alai, ani lo egale alav. Nor shall you say, even though he said that about me, I'm not going to say that about him. Yeah? Even though he did me wrong, I'm not going to do wrong against him. So what you're basically doing is, it's also a form of vengeance. You're pointing out the fact that he wronged you. Now, it's not that you have to accept the way that he wronged you. You can certainly do something about it, take him to court, have a rabbi intervene, or whatever the case may be. The point is, you shouldn't do so with the intention of just venting your vengeance. Because through this speech you have revealed half of what the person's done. Right? You've partially spoken Loshon hora about him. This is a very important principle in being God-fearing. Not taking vengeance. Not even subtly, not even indirectly. But if the one who's transgressed like this is not a God-fearing person, like somebody who's thrown off upon himself the yoke of heaven, and he's not careful with anything. He desecrates the Shabbos, he eats not kosher, he does all types of other transgressions. And everybody else knows that what he does is a transgression. Mitzvah l'sapir b'gnuso. It's actually a mitzvah to let people know about the wickedness of this person. Legalos chatosov, in order to reveal his transgressions, ula'avish levali averos bein even adam, and to make these people look bad in the eyes of other people. Yeah, he's probably pretty clearly talking about where you have basically an observant community, and you have one individual who was raised as part of that observant community, and then at some point he decides that he's going to break away from all of that. So there he has made an intentional break between what he was raised with and what he understands and knows to be the truth, and where he's going. And therefore it's a mitzvah to let other people know about the direction that this person has taken and the direction that he's going in. But if you're talking about somebody who doesn't really know any better, they were not raised any differently, they're just continuing the way that they were raised, even if they know that there's an idea of keeping Shabbos and keeping kosher and all of this stuff, but they don't buy into any of that because they don't even believe in God, because that's the way they were raised. But it's not like they really knew any better. So then it would be different. I don't think it would necessarily have a mitzvah to go reveal this person's transgressions, number one. And number two, generally speaking, that type of person lives in a community with other people like that. God forbid nowadays you have, large communities of unobservant Jews who don't care anything about Torah and mitzvos, just their Jewish identity and whatever they think happens to be Jewish in their own mind. Yeah. So what's the point of who you're going to publicize this to? It's not like anybody else around them generally is observant, that we have to warn the observant about these people who are not. So there's really no point in saying anything about these people. Revealing their transgressions for the sake of them. If it happens to be trying to caution people either against this individual or against the synagogue or against the particular movement in Judaism that he ascribes to, right? Then you could do that. But you could point out what the pitfalls are of, the reform movement or conservative movement, which are against Torah observance, are against, in many ways, traditional Jewish beliefs. So I'm not saying that you go bashing the reform morning, afternoon, and evening, but if you have a conversation with somebody, and it's important to stress where those movements are wrong, in order that the person should know how to guard himself and protect himself and be aware of the fact that they're not acceptable, at least according to the Orthodox traditional viewpoint. That you could do. But just publicizing for the name of it, why, what's the point of doing that? Certainly regarding the individual. And all of this is in order that the people, referring to the observant people, will hear about this person and they'll distance themselves from him and from the transgressions, ostracizing this person from the community because he's broken away. So he should also be ostracized so that no other people are drawn after him as well. Shinemar, as it says, Tovas Tzaddikim ish ovel. It's despicable to people, to the righteous despise, they find it distasteful, those who transgress. And therefore we shouldn't want to be in the company of such people. Again, I think there would be a distinction between people who are not observant because they just don't know any better, and while a person shouldn't want to spend too much time with those people just because the interests are not the same, and the attitude and the activities and the language and the conversation is not the same. There's really not point spending too much time with those types of people, even if it's not their fault, because in the end of the day, it's not going to be a good influence. Yeah. But that being said, ostracizing these people, that's not the point. So there might be friends or family who are not believing or they're not observant. There's no point in ostracizing them. That's not the point. If they're just average, secular Jews who really were raised with no religion and really don't know much, and haven't had or haven't even decided, even if they haven't taken the opportunity, but at the end of the day, they haven't taken or have had the opportunity to learn Judaism properly, so there's no reason to ostracize these people. No reason not to spend time with them, particularly when you're talking about family. Yeah, as long as it's limited in a way which won't have a bad influence on you. If there's a person who is, let's say, let's say Jewish, but very critical, very cynical, very opinionated, and very demeaning of Judaism and Jewish religious people and things like that, so he would probably fit under this category. Even if he wasn't raised religiously, but he's anti-religious. It's not like he's not religious. It's one thing to be religious or the other not religious, but to be anti-religious, that's already a different story. Right? You don't want to be religious? All right, look, we're all kind of grappling with exactly how religious we can or want to be. But to be anti, then I think that somebody who's anti should be considered to be in this scenario, that you shouldn't have anything to do with such people. It becomes difficult when, of course, these people who are anti are also your family. Parents or grandparents or siblings. Yeah. And I guess there might be some extreme scenarios where there's no choice but to part ways, even with parents, even with grandparents, even with siblings. But that should only be extreme scenarios, right? If you're talking about close family members who are anti, you should try and at least diffuse it and say, listen, I don't have any interest in making you religious. And I hope you don't have any interest in making me not religious. So let's just put religion outside of the discussion. We don't have to talk about religion. I'm not attacking your way of life. And, I ask you to stop attacking mine. If the person continues, then you say, I demand that you stop attacking my way of life. I will not tolerate that type of stuff, that type of behavior. Yeah? If you want to have a normal relationship, yeah, I'm willing to try and talk to you about the things that interest you. Do things that you're able to, that you would like to do, that I'm able to do within reason, right? But the knocking the religion and making these comments about God, all that I won't tolerate. There's no room for that in our relationship. So if you want to have a normal, decent relationship, fine. Otherwise, we'll have to part ways. And furthermore, it says, Yiras Hashem soy nas ra. Those who fear God hate evil. V'omru, and it said, the sages said in Sanhedrin, Rasha ben Tzaddik mutar likroisoi Rasha ben Rasha. A Rasha who's, a Rasha ben Tzaddik, a Rasha who is the son of a Tzaddik, you can call him a Rasha ben Rasha, the son of a Rasha. Tzaddik ben Rasha, a Tzaddik, wow, the son of a Rasha, mutar likroso Tzaddik ben Tzaddik. You can call him the Tzaddik, the son of a Tzaddik. That's interesting. Let's see the explanation. V'daf kal derech ze mutar lahachlimoy l'shem shamayim. And in this way you can embarrass the person. So let's say he's a Rasha. So you can call him a Rasha ben Rasha, even though his father was not a Rasha. Why? I guess because the person said, look, it's one thing to call me a Rasha, but to call my daddy a Rasha? That's bad. So maybe the point here is that he feels like his way of behavior is actually causing people to curse his father. And maybe that will prevent him from acting in this way. Yeah? And a tzaddik, who is a tzaddik ben Rasha, you can actually call him a tzaddik ben tzaddik, even though his father was a Rasha. You can still refer to him as being the son of a tzaddik. Why? Because that would kind of encourage people. You see, if people go on the right path, even if the parents are wicked, in the merit of the children, people refer to their parents positively. So it's worth becoming a tzaddik. You can do that. In order to embarrass them, l'shem shamayim, meaning calling the Rasha ben Rasha, even though his father was not a Rasha. Aval mi shemiskoitet imoy, but somebody who's arguing with this person, and he's only saying this in order to chepper him, to upset him, but he's not doing it l'shem shamayim in order to kind of chastise him, then you cannot do such a thing. You can't reveal the person's transgressions. Only if it's with the intention of bringing the person back on path, on track. And if the person who's revealing this, that's the magale, he's a sinner, he can't reveal the transgressions of another. Because he's certainly not revealing the other person's hidden things for good. A person should guard his mouth. A person should put what do you put on a dog? Like a muzzle on one's mouth. Okay, so these then are all different scenarios where it would be prohibited to speak negatively or to speak Loshon hora. The next paragraph is going to explore some possibility where it might be permitted. Sometimes there are some specific scenarios where speaking Loshon hora can actually be a mitzvah. Two wicked people who have taken counsel to do wickedness. You can actually speak Loshon hora to turn one against the other, in order to break up their counsel and prevent them from doing the evil deed. So they will not do evil to good people. Or a man, for example, who is courting a woman who's forbidden to him, mitzvah ledaber Loshon hora, it would be a mitzvah to speak Loshon hora shelo yasu havera, to prevent from doing the transgression. Upamim afilu kishachoite rasha gamor Ein lachlimo berabim. However, sometimes, even if the rasha he is completely wicked, still it's not permitted to expose him in public. B'makom sheyesh lidog shemiyetze letarbus ra. If, for example, by exposing him, you'll throw him totally off the path, and he'll become what's called tarbus ra, right? So there's a transgressor. There's somebody who transgresses often, but he might do so privately, or he might do so out of, let's say, like we say, the ta'avon, just because of his yetzer hara. But if you go embarrassing in public, you're likely to get him so angry and get him so upset, you actually push him off, so he goes l'tarbut ra, and he becomes an enemy of Hashem, an enemy of the Torah, an enemy of the mitzvahs. So there it would be better not to punish him and not to embarrass him in public if you know it's going to push him off the brink. You can also speak Loshon hora about people who are constantly stirring up arguments and the like. Shneimar, it says, "V'ani avoi acharaich umilisi es devarecho." Should be devareich. That's what it says. Devareich. Excuse me. So this is talking about when one of King David's sons wanted to rule in his father's place. So he collected a bunch of followers after him, and he made himself a self-proclaimed king in his father's lifetime, the lifetime of King David. And anyway, that was forbidden because King David had already expressed that, through Hashem really, that Solomon would be the king after him. And here the son of his went and he did that. So when that became known to the prophet Natan, right, Nasan and Navi, he went and he told Bathsheba, the mother of Shlomo, right, David's wife, that this other son is trying to appoint himself king. And he said, go into the king and tell him, ask him, did the king change his mind and have this other son appointed as king instead of my son, which you promised to me that Shlomo would rule after you? And then Nasan Navi said, I'll come in after you and I'll strengthen your words, right? In order to convince King David that that you're telling the truth about what's really going on here, and he will confirm that he intends for Shlomo to be the king instead. So you see from here then that it's permitted to say Loshon hora. Mutos Loshon hora abali machloikes. He was making machloikes, making himself king when he really shouldn't have been. So you see the prophet himself went and advised her, and he did the same to say Loshon hora, meaning tell the king about what he was doing. That's interesting. I don't know why that would be considered Loshon hora, because at the end of the day, it's the toeles. The king wanted Shlomo to be ruling after him, and here this other son was trying to rebel against the king's will and become the king himself. And it's something which was done openly as well, in public, in front of everybody's eyes. So I'm not sure why this would be considered speaking Loshon hora. Number one, it was public, and therefore it's not Loshon hora. And number two, it's the toeles, and therefore it's also not Loshon hora. And if the author is just trying to use this as an example of telling us that when you speak Loshon hora, the toeles, for some practical benefit, then why would he choose such an extreme case for that? I mean, there are much more simple cases where speaking so I'm not quite sure why he's bringing this example. You got the play page, Kuf Samach Gimel? Same page, I think, Kuf Samach Gimel, at the bottom. Paragraph starting with the word avur. Okay? Avur asher harbe dvarim tluyim b'lashon, since many things are dependent on the tongue. Tzarich lishmor l'shono miod ve'al ken Omar David. He has to guard his tongue greatly, and therefore King David said, Natzor l'shon chamerah, guard your tongue from evil. V'amru, Rabbi Ullman the sage of blessed memory, said, Maaseh b'adam echad, there was a story with one person, Shekara barhov, who was calling out in the street, Mi rotzeh liknos sam chaim, who would like to buy an elixir for life. Bo kol ha'olam niknos. Everybody came to buy. V'hotzi sefer tehillim. And he took out a sefer tehillim. V'elehem masher kosu bo. He showed them what's written there. Mi ha'isha chafetz chaim. Oyev yomim lirosh toiv. Nutzor l'shayin chamera. Who is he who desires life? Who would like to see good? Such a person should guard his tongue from evil. This is the source, of course, for the name of the book, the Chafetz Chaim. Right? The famous book written by Rabbi Yisrael Meir Cohen, the author of the Mishnah Berurah, on the halachas of Loshon Hora, and he called it the Chafetz Chaim. Two parts. There's also, a second book, the Shmiras Loshon. Ukeshero'ah ze Rabbi Yanai, when Rabbi Yanai saw this person selling people the medicine of life, which is the book of Tehillim, he took him to his house, he gave him food and drink, and he gave him money. The students came and they said to him, until now you didn't know this verse, Rabbi, that you're showing such favor to the person who quoted it? He said to them, Yadati, I certainly know the verse. But I was not careful enough to uphold the matters, the matters contained therein. I mean, of course I know the verse, but I didn't realize how important and how significant it is, and how much it contributes to one's life, to speak positively and avoid speaking negatively in Loshon Hora. And when I would read this verse, I would read over it, not pay attention. And this person has come and established the importance of this verse for me. And from now on, I'll be more careful guarding my tongue. Therefore, a person who's gotten used to speaking Lashon Hora, speaking words of frivolity and jest and things like this, scoffing, and to speak nonsense, false things, and now he wants to refrain from doing this and guard himself. Let him make the following protective measure. He should distance himself from the friends that he had initially, with whom he was accustomed to speaking Lashon Hora and slander and scoffing and making fun of and all of that stuff and lies. He should distance himself from his cronies. Because if he stays with them, he will not be able to hold himself back. Because they'll start speaking to him in the way that they're normally speaking. And then he won't be able to hold back, refrain from speaking in the way that he was accustomed to speaking with them about. A person should be very careful with silence in order to refrain from, to limit how much he's opening up his mouth to talk. And he should sit alone in the room and read Torah. It doesn't necessarily mean to say that he should be alone without other people, but what it means is, if he has to choose between being with people and not learning Torah, or learning Torah and being without people, let him choose Torah and be without people. Than to be with people, he's not going to be learning Torah. But of course, if he could be learning Torah with people, that would be even better. And that's why it goes on and says here, and therefore connect to people, only to people who are speaking words of Torah and they are God-fearing people. And he should accustom himself this type of behavior, and ultimately he'll find that it will be a remedy for his sickness. Okay, let's stop here.